Hi everyone, Melanie here, and Happy New Year. This is the first video of 2025, and if it's the first time you've watched one of my videos, I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you subscribe. Can't even say that, can I? So today I'm working on a 8" by 4" canvas, and I'm just giving it a coat of cream gesso from Pretty Gets Gritty. All the products I'll be using are from Pretty Gets Gritty, so if you head on over to the website you'll be able to find what I'm using. So just giving it a quick dry off. And now I've got some texture paste and the Pretty Dashed stencil. And just popping this texture paste through the stencil in random areas. I don't want it fully covered because there's going to be die cuts and everything else going over the top. Just giving that a quick dry off, and I did go and wash my stencil and my palette knife. So just coating that with some more cream gesso, and I do it as I go along. So I die cut the Marrakesh die, and this comes in a circle and you get a panel die as well. So I've just ripped up part of the die cut, and now I'm using the matte gel medium to stick it onto the canvas. And I do this in 3 different areas. And there you saw me give it the heat gun a couple of whacks trying to get it to work properly, and it wasn't going to work properly. In fact, in a minute it dies completely, so I have to resort back to my old heat gun, which is still going after all this time. I did not expect it to still be going. So as I was trying it, I was deciding whether I was going to do 2 separate circles or whether I was going to layer the die cut up, and I decided to do them 2 separate, and those are they're from the Wings of Change die set. So I use the Wings of Change and the Pretty Dreams die set as well, and Those are single die cuts, and this is where it dies completely. So I use a variety of single die cuts, double die cuts. I think the dragonflies were 3 layers of die cuts. I also snip into the die cuts as well, so you've got elements that you can use, or I've used separately. So just look at your dies and look at the design that you want to create, and if you don't like the die cut the way it is, and you want to add more, or you want to take some away, you can, because it's a piece of card. So here is an example of me cutting into the die cut, and I've layered up 2 full ones, and then I've cut the moon separately. And I'm just cutting a bit of grey board to raise the embellishment up. So I've just snipped into what was left of that die cut, and I'm adding extra elements. It's all about, mixed media is all about experimenting and taking things to, or creating the design that you want to create. So you might watch this and think, oh, I like that, but I want to put so-and-so in. It's entirely your piece, and the video is just for inspiration. And if you want to take it further, or you want to do exactly the same but different color, it's entirely up to you, as long as hopefully you take something away from this video. And mixed media is not, there's no reason to be frightened of mixed media. A lot of us do these things with our creating our cards. It's just a different format. You're doing it on a canvas, or you're doing it on a piece of mount board. Just enjoy the process. Now I'm layering up 3 layers of the die cut larger dragonfly, and as you saw on the moon with coggage, I just used the gel medium on the grey board. You don't need to add it to anything else, because that won't be stuck to your canvas. It's the grey board that will be stuck to the canvas. So I'm cutting really thin strips to put onto the dragonfly, because obviously your levels, or the levels of the embellishments are getting higher. So I'm only adding them to the right hand side of the dragonfly. And I think it's a couple of layers of grey board this time, just to get it so it's the right height as the moon with the coggage. So going in with the cream gesso and going over the die cuts that haven't been gessoed yet, and I'll then be doing the larger dragonfly as well before sticking it onto the canvas. So I gave it a quick dry before sticking it onto the canvas, and also added a bit of the gel medium onto a small section of the left hand wing, because that is overlapping onto the moon. Now I'm layering up 3 die cuts of the smaller dragonfly. So there was six of these cut, because there's two small dragonflies on here. I'm just adding some paper flowers and some resins, just to see where they're likely to go before I actually stick things down. And I'm not going to stick the paper flowers down yet anyway, because I need to colour up the project first. Just moving things around before deciding where the elements are going. And I've got some foliage that I double layer up, and the little twizzly die cuts. I don't know what they're called. Twizzly is fine. And adding the gel medium to them. Sticking down the dragonfly. Also getting rid of some of the gel medium off my fingers as I'm going along. The paper flowers that I'm using are the new paper flowers that Pretty Gets Gritty brought out at I think it was the end of last year. Might have been November, beginning of December, that they brought these ones out. And you can choose which paper flowers you want. It's not like a big bag of an assortment. You get like a pack of 10 or individual ones. So you can choose whether you want the little tiny roses, which I didn't end up using. And they are, I love the paper flowers, and I love the resin flowers and the metal flowers and the metal leaves. All of the embellishments that you get from Pretty Gets Gritty are absolutely gorgeous. And I use the vintage pearls on this one as well, and I must admit they are my favourite out of the pearls. So I'm very gently going over, because you've got to be careful with the heat gun with the resin, because it will melt and it will scorch. So I'm just placing back the flowers to make sure that I'm happy, which I'm not. I've also added in some metal leaves as well, and I was happy with the placement of the metal leaves, but the flowers I still wasn't 100% certain on those ones, and I do change them. Going back in and covering everything that I've stuck down with the gesso. And I decided on the cream instead of using white, because I didn't want it as harsh, and I was going for, you'll see, but the colours that I choose to paint it, they're not colours I normally go with, but it was a quite fancy sort of doing a vintage feel. So that was why I went with the cream instead of the white, because the white I felt would have been too stark for this project. So now we come to the colouring up, and I'm taking some of the cream gesso out of the pot, and I've added some of the old-fashioned Drunken dust to it and giving it a good mix up. So I'm just adding a little bit here and there, giving it a bit of a spray with the water, just to give it a nice subtle bit of colour to it. And normally the drying process I cut out of the videos that I do, but I thought I would leave it in, because there you can see that I'm drying it and adding a bit more water or adding a bit more of the paint mixture as I go along. So you can see that I'm building up the layers of colour as I'm doing it, basically. Just adding a bit more up into the top corner and using my finger to break up the harsh lines. You can do it with a paintbrush, but I wasn't even thinking, I was just doing it. I was in the zone and thoroughly enjoying myself. Lydia wasn't impressed with the heat gun, because that one is a lot noisier. Putting down the colours, and I'm thinking, well, do I want a bit of pink? Do I want larger flowers? Or, like I said before, I brought down too many flowers, and it was, well, which ones do I want to use? So I also couldn't make up my mind what colours I wanted to use. So I've popped out, what have I put? Oh, hello, it's gone. I popped out some Lady Magenta, some Crimson Kiss, and the Woo Woo Drunken Dusts. And that was too fast. I didn't even see which one. I think that's Lady Magenta. Yeah, it is. It's Lady Magenta that I've added to some of the cream gesso. In fact, I end up using all of the ones that I'd pulled out. The Lady Magenta was a bit paler than I would have liked. But that's fine. It's fine. So the next one I used was the Crimson Kiss. And it is all about layers, because even though I'm going back in with different colours, you can still see the original colour underneath. And there I added the Woo Woo on top of the Lady Magenta, and it's given a really nice colour. as I'm adding in more colour, I'm moving the canvas around because I do have a tendency to forget to move the heat gun away from the brush, and then my bristles melt, which is not a good thing for a paintbrush to have melted bristles. So now I am adding in the paper flowers. As you can see, I am having a bit of a problem trying to get the lid off of the Cinder Toffee in one piece. So when I've finished using it for this project, I went and got some cling film, and I think I've ended up like having 4 layers of cling film inside the lid and screwed it down to hopefully stop it drying out. And now I'm going in with the metallic paint and highlighting on the die cuts and the resins and the metals, and I'm trying to avoid the base, but you don't always manage to avoid it, especially if you're in areas that have got quite a bit of die cut elements. I decided to go in with the Versafine Clair Nocturne to frame the canvas, and so that way it'll draw your eye into the artwork. And going over with the ink, it's given it a very like matte smoky look, and I presume that's from going over the gesso, but I really like the effect that it's given. On the final stage now, adding the vintage pearls. And this I do find one of the hardest things to do, is to add the finishing bits, because it's either I end up putting far too many on, which I did do, but you don't see that because I deleted it. Or it's where do I put that extra one? And it can be quite difficult. And as I'm doing it, I'm thinking I do actually need to add a couple more of the flowers, and I did put one of the small roses in at the end. I hope you enjoyed this video. I thoroughly enjoyed making this canvas, and hopefully I will see you in the next one. Thank you so much for joining me today, and bye.